and just see. He said, well, what we need to do is just wake them up and let everybody say goodbye. And so we took one more test, and the test showed a little movement that Thursday. We prayed. Yes, we prayed, certainly. Don't think this. And that Thursday, the test showed that there was a little movement on the right side of the heart. But they told us that, don't worry, it's not nothing. Now remember, this was the side that was completely dead. Nothing was. And they said, but just don't get excited, you know, because it's really nothing. Nothing has changed. That Thursday, we waited all day. You know, we would go in and see him and pray. We began to call the saints, and I have never in my life seen such a display of love. And it just showed me, I walked away from this experience saying, God, if your people can just get together, there's absolutely nothing that we cannot do. People from everywhere, from all races, they begin to call. From the Bahamas, from Andre Crouch and them were over in Indonesia, Bishop Polk in Atlanta, Jan here on TBN began to, and one of the prayer counselors, when they called in, said that the Lord had gave her a word, Psalms 1:17 and 18, thou shalt not die but live and declare the glory. And the people of God from all over, Pastor Hagan, and just from little churches in Decatur, Illinois, we're just praying. God doesn't want Ron to die. God doesn't. We're just rebuking death and believing God. And you're hearing all this. And yet the doctor keeps telling you, no, you know, we're happy for your faith, but it isn't going to happen. Well, that Thursday he came in. Now, he refused to do the surgery on Wednesday. That Thursday at about 10 o'clock at night, he said, well, I want to replace the aortic valve. I want to replace the ascending aorta, and I want to try to repair the aortic valve. You know, whatever procedure he was going to do. He began to say he would have to do the bypass, and he said, now, I don't think Ronald's going to be able to handle it. He could die on the table. That's what I want to do, but I know he couldn't stand all of that. So what I'm going to do is if I can just replace the aortic valve, I'll be happy. So all of us were sitting in the room, and we just began to praise God. When he said, we're just going to believe God. He said, well, I asked, well, what are the chances of him? He said, it's 50%. You know, 50-50. 50% he could die, 50% he could live. We said, well, we're going to take those odds, and we're going to believe God. And we began to talk, and Pastor Stacks from Detroit and every various ones began to say, we have to believe what the word has said. Remembering what he said on Sunday, he won't die. He's going to live. He's going to live. And so that Thursday night, he had scheduled the surgery to start and the people to come in the OR at 5 o'clock in the morning. And we began to arrive. And we got there early in the morning, and Pastor and some others got in before the OR crew. They got in and began to anoint the instruments in the room and said, God, your presence be in this. We had a little inside connection so we could get in there and do that. I'm telling you, this is real now. So we began to anoint the room and pray in the room and believe God. He told us that the prep would take over an hour. The surgery started at around 7 o'clock in the morning. And the prep went through less than an hour. He got in there and began to work. So we had a hotel in the room, in the hotel in the hospital. So I went up there and laid down. My father and BB came and knocked on the door, maybe about 2 or 3 hours after that, knocking on the door, saying the doctor said everything went so smooth that he's not only going to, he didn't have to replace the aortic valve. He didn't have to replace the aortic arch. He didn't have to, all he needed to do was repair it. And because everything was holding up so well, he was just going to do all of it. But when they told me that, I got up. I said, y'all, I'm going home. God done did his thing, and I'm just going home. And so I drove back to Detroit from Ann Arbor. Later on that afternoon, Carvin called me. He said, well, they're finished. I said, praise God. It must have been around 5 in the afternoon, 4 or 5 in the afternoon. He said, they're finished. He said, but now they have to get him off of the bypass machine and his heart has to start pumping. And so I said, well, God's going to do it. Don't worry about it. Just call me when it's done. About 15 minutes later, he called me back and he said, get back up to the hospital right now. I said, what's going on? And he said, just get up here. And so I got in the car and I started driving and I began to pray. And I told the Lord, the Spirit of the Lord came and said, when you get to the hospital, go beyond what the doctors are saying. Find the chapel and pray. And so when I got there, I walked in the room and my mother and father and sisters and brothers and sister-in-laws and all sitting in there, and everyone was in tears. We began to ask one another for forgiveness, and God, clear the line and whatever you want to do because we want you to do it. And at that time, the doctor had come out, the surgeon, and said, I don't know what happened, but Ronald's heart exploded on the table. He said, everything was going so well. He said, I just can't tell you. I do not know what went wrong. He said, all of the surgery went well. Everything just went well. He came off of the bypass machine well, and then all of a sudden, his heart just exploded. He said, and I grabbed it, and I began to massage the heart, and we lost Ronald.